These are our top 30 running backs for the 2023 season. And to start off, Christian McCaffrey, obviously, it's not a super hard pick here. He's going to get a ton of workload. He's going to be the center point on a great offense. Going to catch a ton of passes, which is great for fantasy. Going to get a lot of red zone work. Really no red flags here other than injury, which I just don't try to predict.
Next up is going to be Austin Ekeler, who is our RB2. Pretty much the same exact argument as Christian McCaffrey. He's an elite playmaker. He's going to get a lot of catches. He doesn't have a ton of competition in the backfield, and he's on an elite offense with elite quarterbacks. So you can't really go wrong with him here.
This is where it gets a little tough for me because the next four guys I sort of have about equal, but I still put them all in elite. And third is Bijan Robinson, a rookie running back, which historically rookie running backs have done really well. He's on an offense which last year when they didn't even have good running backs, they still ran the ball at the highest rate in the NFL, if I'm not mistaken, and they have a great run-blocking offensive line. And then they get a generational top 10 pick of the NFL draft talent who can catch passes. He's going to be used like an absolute workhorse more than pretty much anybody. Like, there's a ton of upside here. Really, the only downside to me is going to be how many touchdowns can he get on this offense. I really worry about Desmond Ridder and just that offense moving as a whole. But his workload is going to be so safe, and for fantasy, all you need is a floor of carries and receptions, which he's going to have. So
next up is going to be Nick Chubb, which in standard, he would probably be even higher for me. But once you get to half and full PPR, he kind of falls down the RB ranks a little bit. But he's going to touch the ball a ton. He's a very efficient rusher. The offense should be better than it was at the end of last year, given Deshaun Watson an entire offseason to get better, knock the rust off, etc. They have talked about him catching more passes out of the backfield, which always helps. And so plug Chubb in as a top 5 to 10 running back.
We got two more guys rounding off the elite tier. Saquon Barkley is going to be in there. Did great last year. Another guy who's pretty much the center point of his offense. I mean, when you look at the passing game there, it's really only Darren Waller that you could worry about. But if anything, they just need weapons in there to get the ball moving, which is going to help Saquon. Saquon's going to, again, be involved in the passing game. This is what we like about these elite players. They're either going to have an insane amount of rushes like Nick Chubb and be extremely efficient with him, or they're going to have both involvement with a ton of carries and a ton of pass catching work. And Saquon Barkley is going to get you that. They're going to look to him in the red zone. I think he's a shoe-in for touchdowns.
And to round out our elite tier, that is going to be Tony Pollard. He kind of burst on the scene last year, had a ton of long touchdowns, and he was very efficient on his touches. Obviously, now Ezekiel Elliott is no longer on the Cowboys, so you have an elite offensive line, an elite running back. There's what's not to love. I mean, Dak Prescott's a good quarterback. Tony Pollard was both active in the passing game and rushing game. Even inside the red zone, they still gave him work. Even though Zeke dominated there, they still gave him a couple carries a game there. So without Zeke, you should see those go up. The Cowboys have been a top 5 to 10-ish offense each of the last 4 years. So you always like running backs on offenses that can score more. And you also like running backs that can take any touch to the house, which Tony Pollard showed multiple times last year that he can.
Here we go on to tier 2. And at the top of tier 2, we have Derrick Henry. I know a lot of people might still put him in the elite tier, and he absolutely could finish top 5. There is no argument there. The only reason that he goes down a slight tier, and he's more of a second-round guy, maybe back half of the second, is just because there is a little bit more risk. With his age, he was already an outlier last year in his year 29 season. We really haven't seen any running backs of that age be that explosive, and he was on pace to do really well. He did get injured, and there's just a lot of mileage on him, man. He is, if you go back through college and now through his NFL career, how many carries he's had, it really is the only thing, because I know we don't have to sell you on his talent, on the fact that he's going to be the center point of his offense, on that he can rip 60-yard runs regularly, that he is a touchdown machine. We don't have to sell you on all that. Really, the only thing that puts him below the elite guys, and why I would really encourage you to go those 6 guys first, is just because of the mileage and because of the risk of their bad offensive line and their bad offense in general.
So yeah, our tier 2 guys are basically the elite guys, but they have one slight thing that's wrong with them. So like Derrick Henry's is his mileage and his age. So that leads us next up is going to be Josh Jacobs. Obviously, Josh Jacobs was insane last year. He was a top 2-3 running back, burst onto the scene. No one expected it, and he absolutely killed it. But unfortunately, right now he is not on a team. He is a free agent, kind of. But either way, he's not playing, so that's kind of why he's in this tier. If he were signed today and was practicing, he probably would move up into that elite tier. But with the threat of him missing games and holding out, I just can't trust him enough to draft him in that tier. So that's why he's in tier 2 for us.
Next up in our tier 2 is going to be Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon here, the worry, obviously the positives are that he's going to get a huge workload. P. Ryan's not there anymore. And while, yeah, there probably is going to be one of the backs come in and eat into his workload a little bit, it's probably going to be less so than a really talented P. Ryan. He's really going to have the workload just straight up cut out for him on a great offense. Like, his touchdown upside is going to be there. He doesn't have a super heavy rushing quarterback coming in to eat into his goal line work. They're going to be able to move the ball as long as Burrow's there, and he's going to have a lot of weekly upside for that reason. We saw some 3 touchdown games in his past where he just blows up and gets you 40 points. He can do that. A lot of the detractors this year are talking about his efficiency metrics last year and how they were down compared to his the previous years in his career. And I can totally understand that. However, I do think if he was still efficient in the passing game, and as long as he retains that passing game role, I'm really not worried about taking him as my RB2 or, 3rd round, 4th round RB1.
All right, so next up is going to be Rhamondre Stevenson. The only reason he is this far down is because they did sign Ezekiel Elliott, which that does suck because Zeke does project to take away the majority of the red zone work. I don't think he'll take all of it away, but at least lead in that area. So that does knock Rhamondre a little bit. But honestly, I'm kind of encouraged that they only brought in someone like Zeke, who's kind of old and washed, and they didn't bring in some younger, better talent to compete. That shows that they have confidence in Rhamondre to carry the main workload and still catch all the passes and have probably more carries, a lot more carries. And I think Rhamondre is good enough to break those long carries. So not having all the red zone work doesn't necessarily kill his value, as he can still score from outside of the 20-yard line. So I'm very high on Rhamondre this year, and I'm looking to pick him up in the 3rd to 4th round in all my drafts.
Jonathan Taylor. Now, Jonathan Taylor, again, super talented player. Rough offense this year. Talks of being traded. We don't know what team he's going to be on, and he could move super high up. He could move down if he just continues to hold out. We really don't know what's going to work out with Jonathan Taylor, if he's going to get paid. If he does, he's going to be great. I do a little bit worry about that offense, though. If he stays on the Colts, which I don't know, maybe we're saying he's got a 60% chance now to stay on the Colts, something like that. I would probably keep him around here, to be honest. He's a super talented player, and I understand that, but the offense scares me a little bit, and with a rookie quarterback, especially a rushing rookie quarterback, who they don't historically really do a lot of dump-offs to the running back position, and they can eat into that red zone work. Just a couple of red flags, but still a great player deserving of tier 2. Listen, 98% of you guys who are watching right now are not subscribed. Smash that motherfucking... No, wait, I can't curse. We don't curse on...
Can't say that.
No. Okay, hold on. Take two. Oh, a fun fact, Aaron, I don't know if you knew this, but 98% of the people watching right now are not subscribed, and they need to hit that subscribe button, especially if they're a 25 to 34-year-old male from the United States. Gotta hit that subscribe button. But look at this.
We can see you're watching.
Look at this on the screen. I've never seen a number this crazy. 98%. Guys, we got to hit 1,000 subscribers. Please help us out. If you enjoy the content, thank you. We appreciate it.
So to start off our tier number 3, we do have Jahmyr Gibbs. So in full point PPR, he's probably in that tier 2 because of how many passes he projects to catch. The Lions have already come out and said they are using him as an every down player, whether that is in the slot or as a running back. So he should be on the field often, and obviously that increases your chance of scoring points. The Lions backfield last year had the number 1 most fantasy points scored out of any backfield in fantasy between Jamal Williams and DeAndre Swift. So I see Gibbs and David Montgomery doing much of the same. The Lions offensive line is also very highly ranked in both pass and run blocking. And with Jameson Williams now suspended, they're going to need help pass catching outside of Rhamondre St. Brown. So I look for Gibbs to make a huge impact in that area as well.
Next up, Aaron Jones, probably a player with less upside, but he's really just got a safe baseline. Not a super exciting pick to me. I think he's deserving of being in this area of the draft, and sometimes if he falls, I will take him. But because I don't see him as a breakout, year 28 season, he's just sort of an average pick, and that's totally fine. They do have Jordan Love coming in at quarterback now, and, they got a lot of young players. But I still think Aaron Jones is going to have a pretty safe baseline. I think he's going to catch a decent amount of passes. He's going to get some carries. He's going to get some touchdowns. So if you just need a safe player in the middle rounds, I think you can't really go wrong with Aaron Jones.
Next up is going to be Alexander Mattison. So he's a unique case this year, I think. He's been a backup his whole career. But in the games that he started when Dalvin Cook missed, he's looked elite in all of those. And so now he gets his first chance to be the starting running back. He is the guy. So for me, he has all the chance in the world to become one of those bell cow running backs. I think that is a little high pressure to put on him because we've never seen him do it. So that's a little bit more risk than I would take. So that's why he's in tier 3, because he projects to have a really good workload on a really good offense. And looked great in the past. Granted, that was spot starts and not an entire season consecutively. So that's the risk here. But, when you're getting him in usually the 5th or 6th round for someone that projects to have 250-plus touches on a top 5 to 10 offense, you have to take that risk on the chance that he could take the leap into that tier 2-esque range.
Next up, another controversial pick for tier 3. I know a lot of people don't like Connor this year, but I don't know if those people are looking at what he's done. He is a consistent player, going to get a ton of workload, going to catch a ton of passes. He is on the worst offense, projected to be the worst offense. They're projected to score the least points on the year, and so I can see him not having a ton of upside. And so if you want to go for an upside pick, he's not really the guy. But if you want a guy who can get you 15 to 20 points really in any given week just based on volume, especially in a PPR format, then he's the guy. A lot of people are saying, well, they're not going to have Kyler Murray. We're seeing bad reports on Kyler Murray. Go look what he did last year after Kyler Murray was out. He was still super consistent the whole way. They just keep leaning on him. They keep throwing passes to him. And I really expect more of the same this year. Again, if you need a safe middle round running back, I think that's one of the guys you should look at.
All right, so that brings us to the start of tier 4, which is going to be Najee Harris. Tier 4 for us is guys that should be the starters on their team, should see some workload, but also we have no idea how their backup/handcuff is going to eat into their workload. So to start us off with Najee, Pittsburgh's offense looks to be much improved. Granted, all we have to go on is 3 preseason games, but they seem to be clicking a lot better than they did last year. So if they take that step forward, that should present Najee with more scoring opportunities. Jaylen Warren has been the buzz of the town right now for good reason. He's looked good in preseason, but I think Najee's role as the lead back and the red zone back is secured. So if that offense with second year of Kenny Pickett takes that leap and they get into the red zone more often, that should lead to more touchdowns for Najee, thus providing the baseline of his fantasy points.
I think where we have him here is going to be below most of your ADPs. And if you're in ESPN, Sleeper, Yahoo, NFL, I really don't think that you're going to get him at ADP if you agree with our rank here in tier 4. Yeah. Another player, again, we're worrying about sort of the other running back pieces on their offenses is Travis Etienne. A similar situation. He was pretty good last year. I think he was pretty talented. A lot of people worry about his pass catching abilities, and really after year 1, still more of the same. And they brought in a running back that, could do that. Tank Bigsby coming in. And the worry is that in the second half of the year that Bigsby could really eat into the pass catching work and maybe the goal line work. Again, it's a low sample size for goal line work. So we don't know if Etienne will continue to struggle at the goal line, but it is at least another concern. And when you add up those concerns with the backups, I have him below ADP, although he's still a decent middle round pick, and I still am super scared because I think he's a really talented runner.
So next up is going to be Kenneth Walker. He had a great rookie year last year. He looked very explosive on a lot of his runs. but he must have done some things that the Seahawks didn't really like, because following that great rookie year, they went in the second round and drafted another running back, which is kind of mind-blowing to all the people that follow the NFL, because usually running backs are not valued very highly. And people say don't spend up, but instead they spend 2 second-round picks in a row on running backs. Charbonnet projects to be a better pass catcher. Obviously, we don't know this yet because he has not performed at the NFL level, but he projects to be a better pass catcher, which is kind of a downside for Kenneth Walker, as he probably won't get that pass catching role. The red zone work remains to be seen. There is still TBD on who will get that. If Kenneth Walker does win that and he gets the bulk of the red zone work, then we're obviously too low on him here. But if Zach Charbonnet does win that out, and so now you're left with Kenneth Walker not getting red zone work and not getting catches, then you're really just hoping for break-off long touchdowns, and that's going to be the soul of your value there. And that's just not something that I like to bank my fantasy points on.
So here's a spot where the fantasy bros, I would say, disagree. This is one of our bigger disagreements. Not super huge. I would put him in the tier 3, probably towards the end of that tier 3. I like taking him in the middle rounds. Aaron, on the other hand, does not. Here's my case for Kenneth Walker, and you can pick whose argument you like better. One is that he didn't have the pass catching work last year, and he was still over 15 points a game for fantasy in half PPR regardless. So I don't really think he needs that pass catching work to get it done in half PPR. The other thing is, like you said, the red zone work. We don't know if he's good enough to, get the red zone work yet. We don't know how that's going to shake out. And although, yes, there is a risk of the second half going poorly for him, I still think he's going to have a lot of baseline rushing work between the 20s, and he can always rip you off a big 60-plus yard run. And just because of that upside, that's the little bit that makes me put him above the other two guys in this tier, is that I still think he will be a weekly player regardless, like a player that you should keep in your lineup. Next up, Dameon Pierce, last player in the 4th tier. Dameon Pierce is getting a lot of hype, and he's a real breakout candidate this year. He's getting a lot more talk, especially after the preseason games in which he played, I think every down with the starters. And last year, one of his big things is he didn't play on 3rd down if it was any more than 3rd and 5. And in the preseason games, unlike last year, they started playing him in those positions. A lot of people worried about Devin Singletary coming in and eating to his workload, because Singletary is, a decent player. But so far in the preseason, it's looked really good for Dameon Pierce, a player, again, going into his 2nd year. We like those kind of young players to be breakouts. I will say it's not the best offense, and they didn't invest a lot of draft capital in him, so they're not super stuck with him or anything. They don't feel that way. But from what we saw last year, he already caught a lot of passes and was decently efficient on the ground, and I expect more of that to continue. If he can get even more involved, then again, he's a decent breakout candidate. I wouldn't mind taking him over the guys in this tier just because I think he's got a little bit higher upside.
Yeah, I would agree. Pierce is in this tier not because of a backup or handcuff situation. It's more so we just don't know how good or bad this offense is going to be.
Right.
But he as a player is great. All right, so to start off, our tier number 5 is going to be James Cook. So Cook projects to be sort of a bell cow for the Bills this year, which they did bring in Dameon Harris, but I believe he's dealing with a little bit of an injury bug. I'm not sure how severe it is, but the talk of the town right now is on James Cook. Josh Allen's been raving about him. The coach is raving about him. So I'm very interested in him this year. The downsides are he is on an offense that has Dameon Harris so far, and in his career, he hasn't been the most healthy, but he is very good inside the red zone historically. And he plays on a team with Josh Allen, who also vultures tons of touchdowns in the red zone. So if you already have 2 really good pieces that are in the red zone, and now we have James Cook, who we've never really seen succeed in that area, it's kind of okay, well, he might not have the most touchdown upside, but he is on what projects to be a top 5 to 7 offense, and he projects to have 2 to 250 touches. So those kind of guys will always be relevant for fantasy because, they may score 10 times and they may catch, 30 to 50 passes, which if you can get that guy at his current ADP, then, that's not a league winner per se, but he's definitely going to help your chances to a title.
Breece Hall, I could see taking him even higher than this. He's got a lot of upside. If you're willing to, wait on the injury sort of concerns to settle, which I imagine would happen maybe after 5-6 weeks of the season, then there's going to be a ton of upside on a great offense for a great player. Obviously, there's a lot of people who are just going to be out just because a year removed from injury is risky. But again, he is still a young guy, so I think he can recover and do well and impress people. And his competition being Dalvin Cook is only a little concerning. I'm not concerned for the second half of his season. So if you're able to get him as your, fourth running back, then I really don't mind it. Even in your third, if you have two really solid running backs, because he's just going to have so much second half value for you that he's going to win you a lot of weeks down the stretch.
So next up is going to be Cam Akers. This is more so a workload play, as he projects at least to lead the Rams in carries and catches from the running back position by a lot. I'm not expecting the Rams to be a super explosive or good offense this year, but they should be steady. McVay usually has a fantasy relevant running back. They really didn't last year until about the last 4 to 5 games. Cam Akers actually exploded onto the scene, at least for fantasy wise. So if he can build on that, and he's not in McVay's doghouse anymore, he's not asking for be traded or anything like that. But this is the last year of his deal, so I would not be surprised if McVay runs him into the ground and then just releases him or doesn't re-sign him next year. So I think he projects to get a ton of workload. Checkdowns, because Stafford's getting older, he cannot run at all. I would expect a lot of checkdowns, and really they don't have a lot of competition for targets because you have Cooper Kupp, and then you have Tyler Higbee, and then who. So I would not be surprised if Cam Akers does, catch 50-ish passes this year. That would not surprise me. So I don't know what his upside is, but he should have a high floor just based on workload alone. So if you need that as like an RB2, RB3 floor, I think Cam Akers is your guy.
Next up, J.K. Dobbins. J.K. Dobbins is tough. I think he's a little bit better in half PPR than he is in full PPR. And he's really not going to get the red zone touchdown opportunity that we like because of Lamar Jackson, because of Mark Andrews, both great, red zone threats. That being said, he's still a pretty young player who I think really we haven't seen his full potential yet just because of the last couple of years due to injury. He had a great rookie season, a really promising one, but it has been a while. And I do think he's going to get a lot of just baseline rushing work, but he's going to be a little bit hindered on his upside just because I don't think he's going to get the passing work just because that's not really his forte, or the red zone work just because, like I said, the competition he has there. But he feels like a pretty safe player. Like, he feels like a guy who's just going to get you, he's going to get you 15 carries, and you hope he scores. And so he has a little bit of upside there. I don't think we have him as high as most fantasy analysts do, I think.
So that brings us to Rachaad White. He's an interesting player to try to project. He is his second year. He did take over the backfield from Leonard Fournette at the end of the season last year. He took over like the receiving / running roles. So this year, he projects to be the sole starter, the bell cow running back per se, but I'm not sure how valuable that is on this team. The line is worrisome. I know last year they were pretty bad. I know they were banged up a lot, so maybe returning guys from injury helps that out. But their starting quarterback is Baker Mayfield, as it was announced, which actually will be good fantasy-wise for targets because Baker Mayfield has a 20% running back target share in his career, so he should be peppered with targets, but I just don't see this team being very good, so that's why he's in this tier. I do think Rachaad White is at a slightly above average NFL running back, and he should see a lot of workload, both carries and receptions.
They're one of those teams that I don't project their offense to be good, but they could surprise us, and so there's a little bit of upside there. The offensive line does worry me. And the last player in the tier 5 is going to be David Montgomery. They just have a lot of upside on the Lions. Last year, even when Swift and Jamal Williams played, they both were good for fantasy. They just use their running back options a lot. They had the most running back production for fantasy last year, and David Montgomery is probably a little bit better than Jamal Williams. And I just think they're going to continue to be explosive in that department. He's obviously going to split work, and I think he's going to get the majority of the carries. I think he's going to get less passing work. He's going to be more of a standard or half PPR guy, but he's going to have big upside because there's going to be a lot of touchdowns to go around. And I think he's going to be used on the goal line. So not a bad late round pick.
To start tier 6 is going to be Javonte Williams. Javonte is a very high upside guy, but he also has a lot of risk. Coming back from the ACL plus injury, I think he had an ACL plus another ligament in there, but he just came back and played his first preseason game. He projects to catch a lot of passes. Joe Lombardi is their offensive coordinator, and in every Joe Lombardi offense he's ever coached, the running back has caught a lot of passes. Think Austin Ekeler the past 2 years. That's a Joe Lombardi offense. So I love Javonte, the player. I am worried about the situation with the Broncos offense and with him coming back from injury. Sean Payton's a great coach, but Russ does look cooked, unfortunately, at least up until this point. Jerry Jeudy just went down with hamstring. Tim Patrick's out for the season. Their other receiver that's out for the season. So right now you're looking at their only for sure thing is Courtland Sutton, and he has not looked good in 2 football seasons. So I'm really not sure how good this team's going to be after the disaster that was last year. So that does worry me, but the upside is just too strong to completely put a player like this. And going in the 7th to 8th round, which he is currently going, I mean, that's a low-risk investment right there.
Miles Sanders, we probably have him below average. I think we definitely do have him below average. So we probably aren't really drafting Miles Sanders this year. The thing is, he's never, in the past couple of years, he hasn't gotten much receiving work. The Eagles went away from him getting receiving work probably for a reason, and I expect there to be probably more of the same. He's probably more of just a rushing baseline guy, which I do think he will get. But, again, he's already banged up this preseason. He's not on a great offense. They really don't have a lot of weapons there. So I do think they're going to try to use him because he's one of their better weapons. But how many touchdowns are they going to score? I guess you could say, rookie quarterbacks throw to the running back position a lot, but is he going to be the guy that's going to be used there? We really just don't know. There's a lot of players in that backfield. I do see him as the kind of lead guy, but it's going to be a little bit of a nasty split in that backfield.
All right, so next up is Isiah Pacheco. I mean, this is pretty cut and dry right here. He is what projects to be the leading, at least running back carries toucher. Probably not catches from the running back position, but at least from carries perspective on what's probably going to be the number 1 or 2 offense in the National Football League with Patrick Mahomes as your quarterback. I mean, when you have that many chances to score a touchdown, you're probably going to fall into the end zone 7 to 12 times, which is going to provide you value.
Yep, and then we've got Kamara. Really, I mean, thing to worry about with Kamara is obviously he's going to be suspended. So you're going to miss 3 games there, and I don't typically go for players like that just because I don't want to sit them on my bench and possibly lose the first 3 weeks. It is a shorter suspension than usual, so it's not one of these 6-game suspensions or 8 games that we've seen in the past. So I can sort of understand going with the upside of Kamara. That being said, though, he will have more touch competition than in previous years, and he's getting up there in age. So I don't see like a huge breakout season for him or anything.
So RB number 30 is going to be Khalil Herbert. He is so far the starting running back for the Chicago Bears. He looks to be insanely talented, at least explosive. He has scored a lot of long touchdowns in his career, and the coaching staff have said that they feel comfortable giving him around the 10 to 15 touches a game, which, if that is true, and he does receive that many touches per game with an explosive rushing quarterback like Justin Fields, that typically helps running backs. I could see him providing you, at minimum, weekly flex upside, if not sneaking into that RB2 consideration, depending on opponent and stuff. But, man, has week winning upside every week. We saw him already in the preseason, and pretty much his lone playing time, he took a 62-yard screen to the house or something like that. And the coach was like, all right, yeah, we've seen all we need. Just go ahead and get out. So he is that type of player that is super explosive, and he should be the lead in his backfield. So I love Khalil Herbert as like an 8th to 9th round player. super, super high upside flex and possible RB2 consideration.
That will do it for the top 30 running backs and tiers. Thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed the video and learned something, please subscribe. We'd really appreciate it. We've been the Fantasy Bros, and we are out.